Hey everybody, what's up? Gary Simon here. So today we are going to be designing an email landing page collection form. And the purpose of these is when you're building out a product, and this could be digital or a tangible item, and before you actually launch, it's a good idea to collect emails. Now this is the entire purpose of the page that we're going to design from scratch today. And it's a very powerful marketing tool, one that I've used to success. So essentially, we're going to create a desktop version with a little bit of mobile, or not mobile, but just interactive prototyping. And then also we'll create a mobile variation of the design as well. You'll see it's super simple, but very, very effective. So as always, make sure to subscribe and let's get started. Now, chances are if you're watching this video, you probably want to be a better designer. And if that's the case, how much do you really want it? Because at DesignCourse.com, I've created a UI UX course that will help you go from designing layouts that I might rate a 4 or 5 up to 8 and beyond. But more important than that, as a better designer, this means that you can land higher paying clients and jobs. This course includes over 16 hours of video, 40 interactive UI design tests, and even mentorship where I personally take a look at your work that you submit, I review it, and many times I also revise it, providing you with great feedback to help you become a better designer. Now, for this video, I want you to use the coupon code UI2022, and that will give you 22% off at checkout. All right, so I'm here in Figma, and we're gonna get started by clicking on the frame tool and then we're gonna click on desktop. Now, typically when I start building out a website design, I start with desktop first, just so I can, realize it with its full potential, and then I work opposite, like going from tablet to phone. I don't know or think if we're going to be messing around with tablet or phone, but you know what? We probably could because it's simple enough. It's going to be a super simple layout. So the first thing I always like to get on is the logo, and that really sets the bar for the Navbar. So I'm working top down. I'm not going to start designing in the middle or whatever, although you can. There's no rule saying that you can't, but I have a logo that I designed right here, and this is the logo. It's called Synthable, all right? So, one thing I realized that I didn't do, notice how I scale this up, and these right here are not changing. It's because I didn't convert those to outlines. So I'm gonna go back here to my Adobe Illustrator. I had different logos I was messing around with. And I'm gonna take that object and I'm gonna go to, let's see here, we're gonna go to Path and Outline Stroke. There we go. So now if I copy that, I delete that one, I should be able to scale this up. There we go. Now it maintains the stroke. Okay, so this is the logo that I'm going to use, and I'm going to scale that sucker down, somewhere around there. It may change in size, it probably will, but I think right there is pretty solid. Now, one thing that you want to do as well and get in the habit of doing, if this is for a serious project here, you want to take your frame, you select it, and then you're going to go over here and you're going to choose layout grid. All right, so by default it gives you this 10 pixel grid. We don't want that. We want to choose columns, and then on desktop it's pretty typical to use 12 columns, although I'm really not going to pay attention to these columns. I'm just going to pay attention to the overall very left, very right columns that are going to be created. So having said that, I could just put 1 and then just put a margin of about 120, and in that way we could see that we have a perfectly centered container here from which we can work. I'll probably push this in maybe to like 150, kind of right where the logo is right now, and then that way we can just line that up, and that way the very left and the very right has equal white space right here. All right, so I'll go ahead and, by the way, periodically turn this on and off just so we can see what where we need to align things to. So we're not going to have an actual navigation for this. That's not a typical thing that you have for a landing page where you're collecting emails. You could have a navigation, but you want to minimize the exit points or the bounce points where a person could do something other than give you their email. That's the whole singular focus here. So typically you will have a headline. So let's get our headline here. So I'm just going to put the easiest way, and we can't see this type just yet, to learn music production. All right, so I'm going to keep things simple here. We're going to use Poppins, Poppins, and we're going to make this thing large. All right, so I'm going to start with 70, see what that looks like. It's probably too large. And I'm also going to make it bold. So you always want your headline to be large and typically bold, although it doesn't have to be bold. Let's see here. I think we're going to stick something like right around there. We may end up making this a little bit larger, and I may end up adjusting the leading, which is the line height. Typically, I find that Poppins has a little bit too much for my liking, so I like to, condense it a little bit. Let's push this out like there. All right. And then we're going to have, typically, you'll have a subheadline. The subheadline will kind of just elaborate a little bit further on what's exactly is happening. So I'm going to replicate that by Alt-Shift and left-clicking and dragging down. And we're going to say, join the email waitlist to be notified when our course releases. All right. So then we're going to, now, okay, this is called typographic visual hierarchy. We have two pieces of type. One is more important than the other. However, we're currently styling them the same, and there's something in my eyeball. All right, and this is a problem because you're not really sure which one you should look at first, right? So what we do is we make this one significantly smaller, maybe like 28. And also, to further solidify that typographic visual hierarchy, we can change it from bold to regular. And look at that. Now we've established visual hierarchy. Now, I personally, I'm going to go a little bit smaller, maybe 22. And I think that looks pretty good. All right. There we go. That's pretty solid right there so far. And then finally, we have the most important element, which is the email collection form right here. Now, of course, this is a very open blank area. We're going to remedy that in a little bit. So let's create the actual email collection form. What I'll do is we'll just take this type right here, Shift Alt and replicate it. And we're going to say enter your email address. So we are going to click this little button right there. All right. And what that essentially does is it makes it so that the text won't wrap or whatever. So if you have simple labels or something, you choose auto width as it's called. Now we're going to go ahead and make this bold, push it down just a bit. And now we'll do the actual text field so that people can enter their email address right around here. So we'll take out the rectangle tool. All right, and something like right around here would be a decent size. You don't want it too small. I notice sometimes people make their form elements too small. You want to make sure it has good white space inside when a person types. And then we're just going to make this a white background, but we're going to give it a stroke. All right, so the stroke doesn't have to be 100% black. Maybe we can come in the middle. You don't want to go too light like that, then people can't see it. I've seen people do this all the time. We can come out somewhere, maybe right around here. And that's pretty solid. And then also, if we want, we can have a little bit of border radius, which I typically do. I think maybe I'll just use 3. A corner radius rather. So now we'll duplicate that. We're going to move that over right here for a actual button. So now we'll go ahead and get rid of the stroke. We'll add a fill, make it black. Kind of working on a monochromatic color scheme, white and black. And now let's go ahead and click in here. We'll say join list. All right, and I'll probably make this here. Let's go ahead and make this type a little bit smaller. So we're at size 18 there. And then here, let's go ahead and we can bold that, and we'll make this smaller as well. Good white space here in the middle. We could take both of those elements right here and then just add auto layout and then center it. That way we can move this around and it works well. All right, so that's looking pretty solid right there. In fact, I kind of might want to make both of these a little bit more height even. There we go. I think that's pretty solid right there. Now, also something typical, you might have a little terms area. So you could say by joining this list, you agree to our terms. You can even have a checkbox here. I'm not sure how we're ultimately going to end up implementing that, but let's just do this for now. We'll make this regular. and we'll make this size 14, and we will pull it somewhere right around there for a little bit less contrast. This type isn't anywhere near as important as what's happening up here and above. So it's the smallest, and it has not maximum contrast. And so terms, we would take that and we'll want to make sure that's underlined right here. All right, so this is looking pretty good right here. And we're going to come back to this, and we're going to create some component variants for this. And you'll see what I mean for the purpose of prototyping. Now over here in this right column, which is essentially just completely blank, we can make this really simple and just put in this rectangle, and we'll use our plugins. We'll go to Unsplash right here, and we'll just type in something like music production software, something like that. All right, I like this one a lot. I've seen this picture before. And look at that. I mean, we've just completely given context to this design because this is what we're teaching, electronic music production of some sort. And you can see the keyboard here. It's like a really relevant image for the purpose of this landing page right here. So now let's, like I mentioned, let's switch gears here and let's create a little bit of prototyping interaction here. So first we have our button. What we can do is create a component out of that and then create a component variant. So when we do this, we're going to push this off to the side, and let's wrap a frame around everything so that we can still see a white background. And what happens when somebody hovers over this? All right, so a state change should occur. So what we'll do is we'll take the second one that's been replicated, and we can change something about this. Maybe like the fill color, maybe that lightens up a little bit. All right, something very simple like that. And in order to make that work on hover, we add an interaction. All right, so we'll take this, we'll drag this over, and then up here, we're going to change this to while hovering. All right, right there. So while hovering, and then it could be an instant, which I kind of like that for a simple button transition. I don't think we have to do any type of crazy animation or transition. I think we could just change it to just leave it at instant and it will work just fine. We can go to assets, we'll pull in our button again and get it right over here. All right, and then now when we go to click play to play the prototype, it should change that. Nope, we got to choose the right artboard. There we go. There we go. So as you can see, we're hovering over, and it's just giving us a slight change, letting us know that we're in a clickable region. All right, so another one that we'll do is your the actual email text field. So what we'll do here, let's go to design. Let's choose auto layout with this. And what happens when somebody, maybe for instance, you're going to design another page that has the same type of design for your text fields, which you should, and you want to change the size of it, but you want this to respond and grow appropriately based on what's happening in here. So what we would do is we'll double click into here and we'll change this to fill container. So now we could pull this out and it responds as we want. Now then additionally we'll create a component out of this and a component variant. Same situation, so let's just move this frame over here, give ourselves a little bit more room. All right, so typically we want at least 2 different states for your text fields or your form elements in general. One will be your default state when nobody's focused on it or interacting with it, and another one will be a focus state. This is especially important when you have multiple text fields, but you could still do it obviously in the context of this situation where we only have one. We want to signify to the user that they are currently on this particular text field or form element in general. This could be radio button, checkbox, text area, etc., etc. And the way you do this, there's multiple ways. You could change the background or you could change the stroke, or if there is a stroke on your design. So what we could do is we could just change the stroke color and just make it black. You could do that, that's fine. You could also change the stroke width, maybe to 2. Now that really makes it obvious, especially in the context of if there's other adjacent text fields, that this is the one that's selected. So this is a really simple version. It would be effective too. So let's push this down here. This is going to be on click, change to, and then we can reverse this and go back to that once it's clicked on again. So finally, now we go back to our assets, drag this in, get it lined up right there. All right, that looks pretty solid to me. We could have included this, by the way, by joining this list, but I decided not to, or I forgot rather. And then we can go back here and we click in it. There we go. So you can clearly see we've created a focus state that makes it obvious that once a person starts to type in, that this is indeed the focused text field. Now for bonus, let's look at what this might look like on a phone. All right. So what we'll do is we'll go to our frames. We're gonna go phone. We'll do it iPhone 13 Pro Max frame, and let's just start replicating some of our elements. All right. So typically when you're going from desktop to phone, things are going to scale down in size. So like this might scale down. Being that there's no menu, we could just center this thing up and that would be just fine. You'll find it, especially on a mobile phone designs, a lot of things that are aligned left or right end up aligning center. We have the decision to make, are we going to include this photograph? And I think we definitely could. We could take this photograph and maybe situate it sort of like this. We don't want it to take too much height on the phone, but if we click this and change this to crop, maybe we get more of the person's face in there. There we go. That looks pretty good. And then we'll just take some of our elements here and start to recreate them. So first of all, we're going to scale this down. It's much too large in my opinion. So maybe we'll go to 40, give that a shot. Let's bring this in. And by the way, you could do the same thing if you want to bring out the grid. We could just choose one here for now and change this to columns. Change that back to one rather. Sorry about that. And maybe we'll have something like 60 or more like 40. There we go. I don't think it's going to be too important for us, although when we get to the text field, maybe it will be. We'll just center this stuff. And we can come up here to our alignment tools and make sure it's centered within the frame itself. We'll scale this down probably to 18, I would assume, and then maybe we'll center that as well. And get this in here. And center that up. And then we'll go ahead and take these three elements. All right, so one thing that's going to end up happening is, oh, okay, I did not include the button as a part of that component, which is fine. So this actually works to our benefit. So we want to move this out to here, move that out to there. Notice how the text field expanded. We'll pull this out. We'll push this down. We have to get our agree to terms underneath there. All right, and all right, so one thing I possibly consider here, which because we're in a component, I won't be able to move this over as I want to. So I could take this and we could just detach the component, and then we could center this. There we go. And we'll center this as well. All right. So now let me get rid of this column view. And maybe I'll push this down just a little bit further. Now, when we resize this, when it's in crop, it'll stretch. So we can go back to fill, make this a little bit larger. There we go. And there we go. Very quickly, we're able to create a mobile variation of this layout. Awesome, awesome stuff. All right, everybody, hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to subscribe. Also, check out DesignCourse.com if you want to learn UI, UX design interactively in my brand new course, and I will see you all very soon. Goodbye.